walk through the fire, His name lifted higher. Nothing can ever separate from the love of God. Those not awakened, whose faith may be shaken, and only through Jesus is free. Eternity stays. Even when everything's crumbling, don't give up. Fight to hold on. We must ignore the forces that come for surrender. It's always darkest just before dawn. Even when your heart is tired and broken, we have a Redeemer who loves us, protects us as we walk through the fire. His name lifted higher. Nothing can ever separate us from the love of God. Those not awakened, whose faith may be shaken, only through Jesus is freedom and eternity. Chaos, distractions, corruption, fear, rejection, and panic, the reckoning is here. Manufactured divisions, the enemies within. Evil exposed and down with winds. We walk through the fire, His name lifted higher. Nothing can ever separate us from the love of God. Who's not awakened, whose faith may be shaken, only through Jesus is freedom. Eternity, walk through the fire.
Welcome, everybody. It's Bill Donahue, Discerning Truth. So, welcome to my stream. I stream Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. Monday and Wednesday, we're in the book of the Bible. Right now, it's Matthew talking about this guy, Jesus. And then on Friday, I talk about things related to Christianity, but things that I don't think would be taught in church. Sadly, I'm going to interrupt my teaching in Matthew after today because I hunt every October and I'm heading out. So I'm going to finish Friday and then we're going to have a break. So I didn't plan this well. I'm breaking Matthew right in the middle of the book at chapter 16. Sorry about that bad planning, but I will do today. We'll finish chapter 16, which is going to end you on a cliffhanger because chapter 17 actually explains chapter 16 to a certain degree. And then I'm going to talk on Friday about intertextuality, which just sounds like a big old Bible-y word. And it just means how the Bible, the books of the Bible interrelate to one another. So with that, I'm going to get into the study today. But before I do want to thank, I don't do enough time thanking people in my chat. People like, Disco Daphne shares my stream on Foxhole, like within seconds. If I post it, she's sharing. Rick Roll's always posting my links and doing stuff. I have all kinds of people. I rarely thank people who drop in gold pills because I never pay attention to that kind of stuff. And then suddenly I go in and there's gold pills in my account. Thank you all. Thanks everybody that supports the stream. Thank you that listen. Thank the people that are in the chat. Revolver and is over there on Rumble doing moderator duty. I have a couple mods in Foxhole. And it's not that I get a lot of negative comments, but there's, I welcome everybody. But, let's just be polite to each other. And, if you have something to say and add in the chat, I welcome your comments. If you have a question, a different point of view, it's fine. Don't take over my chat, right? And this is with your ideas. So with that, we're going to get into Matthew 16 because it's a misunderstood thing, and I apologize for one more thing. I just had a bacon and peanut butter sandwich, and I realized after eating it, peanut butter is probably not the best thing to eat right before you're going to talk for an hour, but we'll see what we got going on and how far we can get through this. So I'm going to start off. We're in Matthew 16, verses 1 to 4. I have my mic in the right spot. It says, "Now when Jesus came in the district of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, 'Who do people say that the Son of Man is?' And they said, 'Some say John the Baptist, others say Elijah, others say Jeremiah or one of the prophets.' And he said, 'But who do you say that I am?'" This is the most important question in Scripture. Who do you say that I am? And Simon Peter replied, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God." And Jesus answered him, "Blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but the Father who is in heaven. And I tell you, you are Peter, and on this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it." Okay? Now there's a lot of controversy over this passage, how it's to be interpreted, and I just want to share with you some stuff, a little different perspective. And because when you get to Caesarea Philippi, the first thing you're going to notice, where the heck is this slide? How can I not be here? Sorry, I'm having some difficulty here this morning. 103. Three. How are you not there? I gotta add a slide. Something is totally off. Hang on. Little what do you call it? On-air editing. But I don't know how this did not get in there as slide number. The next slide. Where is it? Oh, it's slide number 10. Okay, that's what's going on. Sorry, cancel. I got to jump down a little further in my slides to get this for you. So I'm gonna fast forward up to this slide, because in Caesarea Philippi there's a giant rock outcropping with a cave in it, and the cave is called the gates of hell. Right? Now, in Greek, a giant rock outcropping is known as a Petra. And Peter's name is a rock, like you could pick up a rock, and it's Petros. So it's like the male and female version of the same word rock. But in Greek, they mean Peter's name is a rock. His name Peter means rock, like a rock you could pick up and throw, a small stone. And Petra is a giant rock outcropping. Now I want you to understand, these guys are there in Caesarea Philippi, where this is at, and they're talking about it, right? And I don't know. I started on the wrong slide totally. I'm going to back up. Let me back up. What's going on? How did I get this started? Because 1 to 4 says, that's why when I started off with the wrong slide, I'm totally confused. 1 to 4. And the Pharisees and Sadducees came to him to test him, and they asked him to show them a sign from heaven. And he answered, "When it is evening, you say it'll be fair weather, for the sky is red. And in the morning, it'll be stormy today, for the sky is red and threatening. You know how to interpret the appearance of the sky, but you cannot interpret the signs of the times. An evil and adulterous generation seeks a sign, but no sign will be given up except the sign of Jonah. I skipped a very important part of this chapter. Sorry, we'll get back here. And the first thing I notice, it's the intent of the Pharisees and Sadducees to test him. This is not an honest question. You ever had people ask you a question and you know it's a trick question? They're not actually wanting to know the truth. They're trying to get you at a gotcha moment. And they're coming in to test them. And then, now I learned this phrase as red sky in morning, sailors take warning. Red sky at night, sailors delight. And it's talking about this idea. If the red sky's at night, people interpret that to mean the next day is going to be calm and beautiful weather. And the red sky in morning is a sign that, hey, you're looking at bad seas. And Jesus is saying, you can't even interpret, you seem to know how to interpret the signs in the weather, but you can't interpret Scripture. Right? What's wrong with you people? You can't do this. And then he says, no sign's going to be given you except for the sign of Jonah. Now, we already studied Jonah, and I did an introduction to Jonah. I did an overview of Jonah, and I also did one on the Leviathan. Because I wanted to show you in those studies that what you've been taught in Sunday school about Jonah is not remotely correct. Jonah is pictured in the Bible as having been swallowed by a sea creature in the original Hebrew words. It's a great fish that swallowed him. And that you're going to find that great fish is none other than Leviathan. It's evil personified as a sea monster. It also, the Bible makes it absolutely clear that Jonah is dead in the belly of that sea monster. He's taken down below the earth, into below the depth. Everything in the story is that Jonah is dead and resurrected on the sea. Not that he miraculously survived in the belly of a whale. Now, I'm not going to go through Jonah's story again here, but with that background information, it makes the connection between the death and resurrection of Jesus to the sign of Jonah clearer. Jesus isn't going to somehow miraculously survive a Roman execution and come stepping out of the tomb in 3 days. Jesus will be dead just as Jonah was dead, right? And God prepared the Romans and the Jews. They're guilty for what they did, but God prepared them to do this. I would say God prepared Judas to betray Jesus. That doesn't mean Judas is off the hook, that Judas didn't of his own free will do it. But God set up the situation to make his will come to pass. He prepared evil personified in the Leviathan to kill Jonah so that God could show his glory and resurrect Jonah. And he's going to do the same thing with Jesus. And then in the Old Testament and in the book of Revelation, you're going to see evil often personified as a sea monster, a serpent that twists up the seas, sometimes a seven-headed sea monster, right? It's a dragon, a seven-headed beast out of the sea. Any of that sound familiar from the book of Revelation? That's this. It's evil personified. And that evil personified ended up killing Jonah and Jesus. It's evil. The forces of evil on this world got together and killed Jesus. And what they meant for evil, God used for good. Now, when the disciples reached the other side, they had forgotten to bring any bread. And Jesus said to them, watch and beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. And they began discussing among themselves, said, we brought no bread, leaven or not, right? And Jesus said, but Jesus, aware of this, said, oh, you have little faith. Why are you discussing among yourselves the fact that you have no bread? Do you not yet perceive? Do you not remember the 5 loaves and the 5,000? And how many baskets you gathered? Or the 7 loaves and the 4,000s and how many baskets you gathered? How is it that you fail to understand that I did not speak about bread? Beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the Sadducees. Then they understood. He did not tell them beware of the leaven in their bread, but their teaching of the Pharisees and Sadducees. Okay? I love when Jesus has to explain what he says to the disciples because it helps us, right? The disciples are talking about their lack of real physical bread. That's the subject matter. And Jesus immediately shifts it to like an allegorical or spiritual interpretation of leaven as sin, right? And the sin in the Pharisees and the Sadducees is going to be the sin of legalism and self-righteousness. And he shifts this goal, right? They're talking about something literal. He's talking about something more figurative. And now we're going to get to where I started, right? And for whatever reason, jumped off. And when Jesus came to the district of Caesarea Philippi, right? This is kind of like deja vu for you. So we're here at the beginning because I started on this slide for God knows what reason. Caesarea Philippi, his disciples, it says, who do you say the Son of Man is? Who do the people say the Son of Man is? And they said, some say John the Baptist, some say Elijah, some say Jeremiah or one of the prophets. And he said to them, but who do you say that I am? And Simon Peter said, you are the Christ. That means Messiah. You are the Messiah, the anointed one, the Son of the living God. And Jesus answered, blessed are you, Simon Bar-Jonah, for flesh and blood has not revealed this to you, but my Father who is in heaven. And I tell you, Peter, upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail against it. Now, in Greek, there's a play on words here. It doesn't exist in Aramaic. Jesus is very likely speaking Aramaic, but in Greek, because Peter's name is Petros in Greek, and rock, that Jesus used the term for rock is Petra, which is a large outcropping of rock, like a cliffside, right? You need to understand that because in Caesarea Philippi, where they're at, it's not like Jesus said this to Peter in Galilee or somewhere else. They're in Caesarea Philippi. There is a large, massive outcropping. It's a pagan site known as Peneus. It's a center for fertility worship in the Greek god Pan. And it is known as the gates of hell. It's a cave in there. And Jesus seems to be standing very near this rock, this large outcropping. He's in Caesarea Philippi, and I think by what he says, we might be able to interpret this passage. The rock he's building his church on is not Peter. It's on the statement that Jesus is the Messiah, the Son of the living God. And the gates of hell that control the underworld, Jesus is going to build his church on that. And the gates of hell are not going to be able to prevail against him, against the church. Gates are defensive mechanisms. They're not offensive. Now, the Catholic Church argues that what Jesus is saying there is that he's building his church upon Peter, and that Peter is the rock he's going to build it on. And it's based on this idea, this Greek play on words, right? But Jesus was speaking to Peter. If he was speaking to him in Greek, that distinction seems important. But it's highly unlikely that he was speaking to Peter in Greek. I don't doubt that Peter spoke some Greek. It was the language of the day. I don't doubt that Jesus was probably fluent in Greek, right? But in Aramaic, which is the language they would have supposed to speak, it's kifa for both words, Peter and rock. There is no such distinction. So I think the Catholic Church is making too big of distinction on this play in Greek. It doesn't exist in the language it was spoken in. It does exist in the language Matthew wrote this gospel in, right? But remember, the biggest question here is, who do you say that I am, right? But the most obvious meaning of this Kepha, Petra, rock, is Peter's statement. You are the Christ, the Son of the living God. He's answering the question, who do you say I am? You are the Christ. That's the rock. The reference to the gates of hell brings our attention to the Kepha, the Petra, the rock, that is clearly obvious in the photo, and the gates of hell. That's why I think they're standing near it, because Jesus is clearly using it as a reference. And I think it's more likely that Jesus picked this location where there is a large outcropping of rock, a Kepha, Petra rock, right? To make the play on Peter's name in Greek, even though he's saying it in Aramaic. By calling his declaration, "You are the Christ, the Son of the living God," the Petra, not making a play that it is Petros in Peter's name. He's saying, this rock that you just stated is what I'm going to build my church upon, not this rock that is the gates of hell are contained on. And with this rock that you are the Christ, the Son of the living God, we are going to destroy the hold that the gates of hell have on people. And the gates of hell are not going to be able to prevail against us. That puts the gates of hell on the defense, right? And then this continues in verses 19 to 20. It says, "I will give you the keys of the kingdom of heaven, and whatever you bind on earth shall be bound in heaven, and whatever you loose on earth shall be loosed in heaven." Then he strictly charged the disciples to tell no one that he was the Christ. Now these verses raise a lot of questions. What are the keys of the kingdom? And what does it mean to bind something on earth or loose it on earth? And why does that binding or loosing on earth affect what is bound or loosed in heaven? And finally, why would Jesus strictly charge the disciples not to tell anybody he was the Christ? Isn't that the message? Okay. Now, one phrase here that helps support the Catholic interpretation of Peter as a rock upon which Christ will build his church is this sentence starts out in first person, singular. "I will give you." The "you" here seems to be Peter based on that context. And we use keys to open doors or locks, right? Peter did originally open the door to the kingdom to the Jews in Acts 2:38 and 39. He was also the first to open the door to the kingdom to the Gentiles in Acts 10:34 to 44. And this may be a privilege given to Peter for being the first to declare that you are the Christ, the Son of the living God. But I think it is going too far to say that somehow Peter is then the thing upon which Jesus is building his church, right? Now, I went through a bunch of commentaries, and one by Michael Andrus I thought said it best. It says, "On bind and loose, the metaphor of binding and loosing was used by rabbis for declaring something forbidden or permitted. But it is critical that we pay attention to the grammar here in verse 19. In my version, there is a footnote with the verb will be both times, and a note that the Greek literally says will have been. It's actually a future perfect tense. This makes huge difference. If it is said will be, that would mean that Peter would be setting policy in heaven. But the future perfect means that Peter is just declaring and responding what God has already done in heaven. And I don't have any problem with accepting the fact that this was Peter's job, to declare what God had already done, because it's also the task of every apostle and every true follower of Jesus. Furthermore, Matthew makes it absolutely clear that Peter is not the only one given this responsibility. Look over one page to Matthew 18:18, and there's an identical promise made, but Peter is nowhere mentioned in the section in Matthew 18:15 to 20. That means it went to all the apostles and to all of us. And so Jesus is evidently speaking to all the apostles, or better yet, speaking to the church as a whole. In fact, the very next verse reads, "I tell you, if two of you on earth agree about anything and ask for it, it'll be done for you by my Father in heaven. For where two or three come together in my name, there I am with you." There has always been interpreted interpreted as 2 or 3 believers, not 2 or 3 apostles, right? So apparently this wonderful promise of binding and loosing in the authority of the church is not the exclusive property of Peter or even the apostles. We declare what God has already done. We are not setting policy in heaven. We are not declaring what is going to be and what God has to be. We don't get to decree and declare what God then must do. We are declaring what God has already done. Right? And then the last phrase here is when he strictly charges his people not to tell anybody he's the Christ. And Jesus commissioned his disciples, go therefore and make disciples of all nations in Matthew 28. He's going to. Yet over and over throughout the ministry, he insisted that his followers tell no one. This happens in Matthew 8:4, in 16:20, and 17:9, and you see it again in Mark 7:36. These are parallel passages in Mark and Luke. Okay? Up until he does the commission, he says, don't tell anybody I'm the Christ. When we look at all the occasions when Jesus said something similar to tell no one, we find that on at least one occasion, Jesus added a qualification. Tell no one till the Son of Man has risen from the dead. And that's in Mark 9:9 and in Matthew 17:9. And this is critical to understanding. He's not telling him he's the Christ until he shows him the sign that he is. Once he's risen from the dead, and you go, yeah, he rose from the dead because he's the Messiah. He's the Christ. It has weight. If you start telling people you're the Christ before you can prove it, all you're going to do is start an argument. No, you're not. You're committing blasphemy or whatever. You can already see that the Jews were accusing him of that. He says, don't tell anybody I'm the Christ until after I rise from the dead. Because at that point, you have the receipts. You're going to bring the receipts right here. He is the Christ, and he can prove it because he got out of the tomb. The time will come for the public declaration when he is being interrogated by the high priest before the crucifixion. Jesus himself is going to identify himself as the Christ right before he dies. But they identify him as the Christ after the resurrection. God does everything in his timing, not our timing. And 21-23 says, from that time, Jesus began to show his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem, suffer many things from the elders and the chief priests and scribes, and be killed, and on the third day be raised. And Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him, saying, far be it from you, Lord, this shall never happen to you. But he turned and said to Peter, get behind me, Satan. You are a hindrance to me. You are not setting your mind on the things of God, but of the things of man. This is the same Peter he just commended a minute ago. Remember? The same Peter that the Catholics said, I'm going to build my church upon you. That Peter didn't make it out of this chapter without falling. So another reason that we can show the previous passage didn't give Peter that authority to set policy in heaven is if Peter was setting policy, this would have never happened to Jesus. Right? When Jesus had just explained to him that he must suffer these things at the hands of the elders and the chief priests and the scribes and be killed, not only does Peter have zero power to bind what's happening, Jesus equates Peter to Satan for speaking against these things. Get behind me, Satan. He's not saying Peter's possessed by Satan. Peter started in a position of arrogance, thinking that he could take Jesus aside and begin to rebuke him. Can you imagine the arrogance it takes to take the Son of God aside and you think you're going to rebuke him for what he says? You just declared him to be the Messiah. You declared him to be the anointed one of God. What kind of arrogance do you have to think you can tell him what he's doing? But we do this all the time. Right? Like I said, Peter's not literally Satan. He's not possessed by Satan, but he's acting like a minister of Satan because he's not setting his mind on the things of God, but on the things of man. We can each become ministers of Satan if we fail to keep our minds on the things of God. I find myself, I have to call myself back when I get there on stuff. And I can get easily fixated on things. And sometimes I get fixated on things that have nothing to do with God. On Neo's show the other day, I explained I really got fixated on the recent assassination of Charlie Kirk and what I perceived to be his lies that were being told about that. It was taking my peace away. It was really doing a lot of negative in my life. And I had to like almost slap myself in the face, like wake up, get back into thinking about Jesus and God and what he's doing and the great things he's doing. And we're here. So Tink, I see your question. I just saw it in the chat. I will deal with that in the break. Excellent thought. Okay. So I don't usually look at the chat because I can get distracted by it, but I did happen to catch that. Verses 24 to 28 says, Then Jesus told his disciples, If anybody would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. For what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and forfeits his soul? And what shall a man give in return for his soul? For the Son of Man is going to come with his angels in glory of his Father, and then he will repay each person according to what he has done. Truly I say to you, there are some standing here who will not taste death until they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. Okay? Now Jesus hasn't yet been crucified. He has already turned the saying of take up your cross into a metaphor for enduring trials and suffering. What we do not see Jesus is saying, if anybody would come after me, their lives are going to be marked by health, wealth, and happiness, success in everything they try. Their lives will be free from tribulation, pain, and suffering. But somehow that's become a gospel that many people preach. This health and wealth gospel is not the gospel in the Bible. Jesus says, in this world you will have tribulation. You're going to be hated for his name's sake. Some people get hated because they're just jerks. Okay, you want to make sure if somebody hates you, it's because of Christ and not because of you, right? I sometimes do stuff to give people reasons to hate me because of who I am. And I can't blame Jesus for that. That's me messing up. But once again, what he's done is he keeps pulling back to this imagery of the Son of Man, with his angels coming and giving glory to the Father. That's right out of Daniel 7:9-14. If you weren't catching it, if you're somebody reading the Gospel of Matthew and you haven't caught this reference that the Son of Man is about the person in the Old Testament who is anointed by the Father and given an everlasting kingdom, Jesus keeps mentioning it and keeps pulling parts of it out of and bringing it into his speech so that you never miss what he's saying. I am the Messiah. I am the anointed one. I am the Son of Man who is going to have the everlasting kingdom. I'm going to have angels at my disposal. All right? Now, at first glance, this passage seems to be saying that some people are alive back then, 2,000 plus years ago, or 2,000 years ago, would see the Son of Man coming with his angels in glory of the Father, and that he would repay everybody which one. This is second coming imagery, including the final judgment. And had I been a disciple of Jesus at the time, I would have understood this to mean that the second, not sound coming, the second coming would likely happen in my lifetime. I think they lived their life with the expectation that Jesus was coming back before they would die. But as we all see in this section of Scripture immediately following this statement, that's not what he's talking about. He's talking about the transfiguration, which is going to happen in chapter 17. Right? Now, the problem is, the Bible wasn't given to us with chapter and verse breaks. Archbishop Stephen Langton added the chapter breaks in AD 1227. Okay? Now, I'm not going to continue Matthew 17 until I get back, but I suggest you read forward and see what happens in Matthew 17, because it absolutely is going to explain what he's talking about here, about him coming in his glory. It's not a full return. It's not Jesus coming back at the second coming, but they're going to see him in his glory in their lifetime. They're not going to see death before that happens, because it happens almost immediately. Right? And this is what happens is people get in there and they start reading these passages and they take them out of context and they use them as a pretext for doctrine, and teach things about that the second coming happened in 70 AD. Okay? What happened in 70 AD prefigured some things that will happen at the second coming. But it was not the second coming predicted. The transfiguration that happened on the Mount of Transfiguration in the next chapter prefigures Jesus' glory at the second coming. It is not a replacement for, right, the second coming. So with that, I'm going to put on a song. I'm going to go read the chat. I already saw one great question, and I will I'll see if there's anyone more, and we'll come back and talk about them. Okay?
worship you alone. You will come to take me home.
You are all I ever need. Jesus, you have set me free. I will worship you alone. You will come to take me home. You are all I ever
You're all I
need.
need.
Jesus, you have set me
You set me free.
I will worship you
I will worship you.
You will come to take me home.
I've fallen on my knees. I will bless the Lord. Oh, oh, oh.
Okay, we're back. So, all right. So the question that Tink asked is about the duality of Jesus, his both being God and human, and how that works out. So I just had this conversation with somebody else. Let me see if I can be helpful in explaining this. The man Jesus, the human Jesus, was born, grew, learned, was tempted, suffered, died. God, the divine Jesus, the Son, the Logos, that John calls him the Logos, the Word, the Son, could do none of those things. He can't learn, can't die, can't be tempted, none of those things. Can't grow, right? He's all that. The man Jesus doesn't know when he's going to return, right? He can say, I don't know the day or the hour. Only the Father knows the day or the hour. He doesn't know that, right? In his divinity, of course, the Son knows everything the Father knows because they're both God, okay? So you're going to see this. Sometimes Jesus will speak out of his divinity. Moses said, but I say, okay? He takes that divine speaking, and sometimes he speaks as a man. And the context is going to show you which way it happens. Think of the tabernacle in the Old Testament, the big tent, right? And inside the tabernacle was the Ark of the Covenant, and above the Ark of the Covenant sat the glory of God, the physical presence of God, right? The glory of God that's above it is not the ark. It's not the tent. It's in the tent, right? In John 1:14, it says, and the Logos, the Word, the Son, the second person in Trinity, the Logos, dwelt among us in a tent of human flesh. He tabernacled among us. It uses that same exact language, okay? Is the flesh divine in Jesus? No. The difference between this analogy and where it breaks down is Jesus is the only begotten, the one of a kind Son of God, in that he was born through the Virgin Mary. He's not created. He's not adopted. Adam's a created son of God. Angels are created sons of God, right? Direct creations of God. We are adopted in sons of God, and we become new creations in Christ, and we are adopted in. He is the only, the monogenes, the one of a kind Son of God, the only begotten one. He was the man Jesus is made through that thing. So we don't have that sharp distinction like we had between the tabernacle tent and the tent of human flesh, and the glory that's inside the tent and the divine person that's in Jesus. Because in Jesus, while there's two natures, a divine and a human nature, there is only one person, and that person is the divine Christ, the anointed one, the Son of God, the Logos that is in there. And so that's why it gets a little confusing, and I admit that. But that's John does the best of explaining that out to us, I think, in a lot of ways. And now I see the comments on Catholics, and I grew up Catholic. I was in a very Catholic home. I mean, mom handled the CCD. I have cousins that teach at Catholic universities, and we're in a priesthood. Catholic, right? With a big C, Catholic. I met Jesus as a Catholic. Okay? I came to faith as a Catholic. Did the Catholic Church teach a bunch of doctrines that I consider wrong? Absolutely. Does John Calvin teach things that I think are wrong? Absolutely. Martin Luther? Absolutely. I went to Calvary Chapel for 20 plus years. Do I think Calvary Chapel teaches stuff that I think is wrong? Absolutely. Now, I can't find a perfect church, and if there was a perfect church, as soon as they let me in, they'd no longer be perfect, because I'm not perfect, right? They all have this stuff. But I decided I couldn't be Catholic anymore because my disagreements with their dogma were too numerous for me to continue claiming to be Catholic. But it doesn't mean they're not our brothers and sisters in Christ. Many Catholics are trusting in Jesus for their salvation, just like you and I. Now, some get caught up in the dogma and the ritual, and they're praying to saints and doing all kinds of other stuff that may prevent them from entering heaven. But I also think there's going to be a lot of people who claim to be Protestant or Baptist or non-denominational Christians that when it comes time to the second judgment, Jesus is going to say, "Depart from me, I never knew you." So I just want to be careful on what we do. And if that didn't help, if Catholics confuse you more than they help, then don't be around that. Go somewhere where it's more helpful. But I see this a lot of times among Protestants. We like to throw stones at the Catholics. And we don't throw as many stones at the Orthodox because most Protestants don't know squat about what the Orthodox Church teaches, but it's much closer to the Catholics than it is Protestantism, right? In a lot of their ways. So it's just, I just want to show people a little extra grace, right? And sometimes it's hard because you see people doing things that you think God can't be honoring this. This is not good, I mean, I watched the Pope criticizing people for being rich the other day, and I just thought, you really said that with a straight face, right? It's like, are you kidding? So it can happen. And then before we do the introduction and get out of here, well, I guess I'll put the slides up. I want you to know. Well, that's where I put the gate. The hell was in the introduction. I put it in the wrong slide. I normally teach Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I'm going hunting. I am leaving this week, so I will finish Friday. And we're going to teach on, like I said, intertextuality, which just sounds like a big Bible-y word, but it means how the Bible connects together. I tell you all the time, the writers of the Bible, if you consider Job, which is the oldest book of the Bible, and in the first five books of the Pentateuch, from Moses, to being the original scriptures, every other writer of the Bible quotes, paraphrases, makes allusions to, or sometimes they'll do what's called an echo of something already revealed and bring that context forward and make a new theological point. That's what intertextuality is. And I say it all the time, but this time I'm going to give you 3 examples. I'm not going to do all the books in the Bible. I'm going to do every genre of book in the Bible. I'm going to do every writer in the New Testament and give you 3 examples of where they did that to prove that what I'm saying is true, right? I'm just kind of, Friday is bring the receipts. I think I seen that sticker. I don't know who made it. I don't even own a shirt with a sticker on, with a design on the front. It would drive me crazy. But I love that sticker. It's funny, cool. They got me standing up from my chair with some shirt with a big old design on the front of it. All of my shirts are plain. As part of one of my quirks. Okay. And so I'm not going to be back with Neo probably until I get back from hunting. Depends on how the snow holds out in Idaho where we go. Sometimes it snows the first week in October, which is a problem for us hunting. We have to leave when the snow comes. I can't chance getting snowed in up there. If it lasts more than 2 weeks, we're going to stay and try to get some more work done. But I'll be gone at least 2 weeks. We'll come back. We'll do Matthew 17 when I get back, and I'll review a little bit into, Matthew 16, so that when I take you to Transfiguration, you're going to see how these tie together, right? And then if I missed your question or you think of one in the next couple of weeks, just email me. Email is much better for me than comments. Some people have had to leave messages on YouTube or whatever for me because they couldn't find me, or they were watching. I had somebody that was watching my videos on Rumble and then they wouldn't play and they found me on YouTube. Email is always the best. It's real easy to remember. Bill at Discerning Truths, plural, discerningtruths.com. Email me. I will answer your question. I get my emails no matter where I am. Sometimes these DMs have been in set for days before I see it. I had one DM on X that was there for more than a week before I noticed it. All my replays, they're on Pilled, but there's no way to organize them on Pilled. But they're in Rumble. I created 14 channels. Like this is going in New Testament books on Pilled, on Rumble. The problem with Rumble is you have to, if you like New Testament books, then you got to go back into Donna Hip Hop and go find Start Here and like Start Here, and then go find Old Testament books, and you got to do it 14 times. I appreciate those of you that did that and continue to do that. It helps with the algorithm, but it is a pain. YouTube, while they're not my friend, and I believe YouTube is a communist platform that's aimed at misinformation, it will shut me down if I use certain words. If it even thinks I'm mentioning anything about injections, right? It'll terminate my my stream. But it allows videos, AI created videos, misinformation left, right, and center. But one good thing about YouTube is they have playlists. So I was able to create playlists like I have one that says Matthew. So all the teachings on Matthew are in Matthew rather than lumped in with all the New Testament books. And then I always create a PDF after I'm done of everything I teach, and I post it on Telegram on my Discerning Truths group. You can download my PDF. Nothing I ever do is behind a paywall. Anything I give you is for free. Use it to any way you came. As long as it's for the glory of the kingdom, I'm happy. I always like to promote my friend Michael Beatty in California. Michael has an audience much, much larger than I do. And he's always sending people, and I hear people all the time that come over and they go, yeah, I came here because I'm in California. And Michael's great. He does different than I do. He does worship music, spends a lot of time interacting with his chat, and then he's teaching through the Bible at a much faster speed than I teach. He's not digging as deep into stuff. He's not breaking it down. He's not teaching you necessarily how to interpret the Bible. It's more of a how to apply Scripture. I like what he does, and he teaches 5:30 a.m. Monday to Friday, and then on Sunday his wife Linda joins him, and they go through the Psalms. They're redoing the Psalms because they finished, and so this is happening. Like I said, Mike, 5:30 a.m. Pacific time is 2:30 a.m. where I am. If you see me in Michael's chat, it means I can't sleep. You know that something's wrong. But I always like to promote him. Michael does great for me, and you know, it's just wonderful here. Now he on Wednesdays prays for the nation. So I try to get out of here on time, which means I got to get out of here like now, so that if you go to Rumble or X, you can sign Miguel California. He'll be praying for the nation. This is great for him and you. And I wish you all a great day. And then God willing, I will see you on Friday. and we'll talk about how the Bible books interrelate to each other. Thank you all.